it's been about 8 years since you've been on Survivor. What's going on in Michelle land since then?
Now I'm founder and CEO of a tech startup.
You're 18 right now. You're a Gen Z. How are you going to try to exist in this AI world?
I think I would learn how to...
What's your method for convincing somebody? Because I'm not really that good at getting people to change their minds, but you seem to have a knack for it.
People believe like the community around them. And so if you can be the community around somebody, you can change their mind and then show them how it can be a win-win.
There's people like you that when they're under pressure, they don't crumple, they don't quit. Is there any life hacks to get there, or does that just come naturally to you?
It comes down to who can take the most pain. I don't view obstacles or pivots as a mistake. That's literally what our job is. Our job is to navigate obstacles.
As the world's changing, I've also been asking myself this question, is any job safe?
I think so. But I also know.
Before we get started, I have a small favor to ask. If you haven't yet subscribed to this channel, then please go ahead and do that. It helps more than you know. Also, please leave me a comment. I will go through them and try to read and reply to as many of them as I can. If you have a question that you would like to ask a future speaker, leave it in the comments section. Thank you. Welcome to Kaizen Connection, where our mission is to turn your next challenge into the opportunity that changes everything. My Survivor friend is here. Welcome, Michelle.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's been about 8 years since you've been on Survivor. Was it 9? 8, 9, somewhere
It
around?
was filmed 9 years ago now, but it was like on air 8.5.
Wow. Okay, so what's going on in Michelle land since then?
A whole lot. So I worked in missions and poverty alleviation for about 10 years. Partway through the next decade, I started working for international literacy and development, doing poverty alleviation and working on projects around the world to help in economic development in depressed regions. And then I resigned from that in December of 2023. I kind of took like a 3-month sabbatical. 3 months into that, I started ideating and deciding to launch a startup. And so now I'm founder and CEO of a tech startup.
Wow. So how does one become a founder of something like that? Because I wouldn't even know where to start.
Yeah, I did not either. So during my nonprofit work, actually, I began soliciting donations from this venture capital group. And they're a venture capital group called Proto Ventures. They're very like human focused. They love to like invest. I knew nothing about really anything in the startup world. However, I was accidentally beginning to build tech products while working in nonprofit for many reasons. Some of it was like I needed an app to help with like a donor event, like a gala that I was holding, and I wanted to like, I ended up making this app that like walks you through kind of like an escape room at your table with the other people at the nonprofit. And so I ended up like architecting that app and then hiring a developer to build it for me. And then even solving bigger problems, like I started a nonprofit, co-founded it, and we started that so that we could solve problems in difficult regions maybe that don't have like banking systems. So for instance, our app can send and receive money to and from people who maybe don't have bank accounts. And also everything is done in a very like transparent and accountable way because we use blockchain. All this to say, I started building apps and different like tech solutions using emerging tech, whether AI or blockchain, to solve problems that I just needed to solve. Not realizing that that was kind of like preparing me for this next endeavor and kind of taking the like mystery off of, oh, if I wanted to create, you know how so many of us have ideas, oh, I want to create this app. Oh, I wish there was a dating app that did this. Or I wish there was, you know, whatever. Yeah. It kind of tore the mystery away from, okay, if I'm serious about any of those ideas, what's my next step? And could I like viably accomplish all the steps to get from 0 to 1? And so, yeah, I guess that's kind of how it flowed.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's crazy how easy some stuff is to do once you just understand how it works. But in your mission to save the world, you still seem like you had time to get on American Ninja Warrior.
That's true. That's true. So I have been like an athlete and competitor since I was little. Like always, I was a runner, cross country and track, all through college, all through high school and college. And then in my 20s became like a rock climber and just outdoorsy hobbies. I had seen American Ninja Warrior and I noticed like, oh my gosh, rock climbers are doing really, really well. Like rock climbers are getting to the end. And so I started training and then applied for the show. And the application process was incredibly easy compared to Survivor, which I was also on. But so I sent in like a video of me like rock climbing and doing roller derby. I was in roller derby at the time, and I don't know, doing some athletic things, and said, "Hey, let me on the show." And then they called me back and was like, "You're on."
Wow. Okay. And they'd already seen you on Survivor, so they know you can talk in front of a camera and everything that goes with that. And you know how to show up, and you'll be there, and you'll make them look cool. So, but I'm wondering what else Survivor prepared you for. I was watching you on there and just thinking about, you know, that Stanford marshmallow experiment where you've never heard of this?
No, well, maybe. Tell me.
There was a study where they got a bunch of kids together and they gave them a marshmallow in a room by themselves, and they told them, all right, you can eat it now, or in 10 minutes I'll be back, I'll give you another one if you don't eat it. And so they found the kids that ate the marshmallow and the ones that didn't were predictors of how well they could do immediate gratification later on in life, and it was a big predictor of success. So for you, I think of Survivor as this playground to test out your social strategies that I would think that would be useful in the corporate world, but I'm curious to see what your take is on this.
Interesting. Okay, so before you brought that up, I had not put this together. So this is like a new thought in my mind. I have a handful of thoughts on that subject, but if there was a way that Survivor taught me something, and it would have been not only Survivor, but it would have been like Aftermath of Survivor as well. And also I started playing like online Survivor games after being on Survivor, which I wish I would have done first because it actually does like teach you certain things about the game. But I would say if I'm sticking to specifically what's something I learned on Survivor that then like really actually does help in the real world, it would be that the more you talk to someone, the more aligned they are with you. Even if you don't agree on stuff, even if like whatever, it's like time spent and dialogue had allies people to you. So that could be in real world, that would be investors. Like the more I talk to investors, the more I talk to potential investors, the more I talk to potential teammates, the more I talk to a person, the more they are allied with me. So like, and I think that's huge. I think that's major.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Making a connection like that is so powerful. But, well, I mean, my thought was something like this. I saw you perform incredibly well under pressure. I saw you deal with really frustrating people. You were supposed to give them instructions. Like one of my favorite scenes with you was leading the blinds. And I mean, you led David all over that course, and
That was such a funny, oh my gosh.
And you won.
Yeah.
Despite...
we were way behind at first.
Yeah, you were. I mean, and you seemed like you really needed that food. You really wanted that food.
Really wanted that
food.
food.
So, yeah, I mean, yeah.
So I see what you're saying. Okay, so I would actually say, though, so what do they say? Something like adversity doesn't build character, it reveals it. There's probably a twofer, though. It's probably both and. Because you have to get it from somewhere, so you have to build it, through perseverance in something. Though I would say Survivor, the ways that maybe my, strengths shone through in Survivor weren't necessarily forged on Survivor, but were revealed in certain ways. For instance, the ways that you just spoke about, performing well under pressure and being able to translate instructions to people that maybe don't see it the same way you do, or in this case had blindfolds on. And so I think there are certain strengths that had been building my whole life were revealed on Survivor, and those are still strengths that are definitely helpful and useful in my, day-to-day life.
That sounds like this was a place where you grew and you realized things about yourself that you might not have known elsewhere. But the thing that really made me think about the way that you win Survivor versus the way you live in the corporate world is you've got to figure out some way that you can survive long enough to get to the top before one of the big guys kills you, because none of the big people, that's how it works, right? Google would not have liked ChatGPT to get to the top because it's taken away their business. And so you've got to figure out how to be awesome, but you've got to figure out how to do that without anyone realizing it. And some of these people that did the things they did, I wonder if that was part of their strategy. Was David really struggling that much at the beginning, or did he just know that it would not put a target on his back? And
I wonder too. I wonder if there's maybe also a nuance to remember is the story arc that you're seeing is also carefully crafted by
Yeah.
master editors.
Oh, I know. I edit these videos.
Right. And so I would say the integrity of the show is up here. I'm not saying the integrity of the show is low. I'm saying it's actually very high based on what I know about other reality shows.
Well, absolutely. And you can't hate somebody for wanting to do the things that give you views, because I wouldn't want to watch it if they hadn't.
Right. I would also say they actually only show probably like a third of the drama.
Oh, I'm sure.
Like there's so much more going on the island that they can't show. They have what 45 minutes
yeah.
or something, once a week, and you're there a long time. So I heard a stat, I don't know if this is true, but I heard something like they have 400 hours of footage for every 45 minutes you see or something like that. So it's like, and I believe that just because there's cameras on you all the time and there's multiple cameras on everybody on your island all the time. And so they have a lot of footage and there's a lot of drama and there's like, they have to choose what to show. Right? They have to like curate, okay, what is the best story arc? So like, even if something really interesting happens to this character, well, if that character is voted out on on episode 4, we should maybe not highlight that person. We should highlight something that happened to on that same day or that same week to a different person because that person makes it further.
Of course. And one of the highlights from you that was so inspiring to me was do you remember when you had to open that combination lock and it looked like it was getting stuck? I don't know what that, yeah. So, and I was kind of annoyed with your teammates because like, I think she's falling apart, and I saw you immediately pull the key out, and I don't remember seeing you ever crumble under pressure the whole time you were on the show.
Yeah, I had forgotten about that actually. And so what's interesting is I don't remember who was on the team next to me, but I want to say it was like Adam or somebody was on the like team next to me, and they didn't close their like lock, like
Sure.
They didn't cover it.
Yeah.
And so I was able to go like look, and I went and looked at the combination, and I thought that I just came back and like put that in, like I thought
Gotcha.
so I was so frustrated, like I did what I copied them, like I cheated, like you're allowed to do that, you're allowed to look if somebody doesn't cover their combination, but like. So I don't remember why it didn't work or what was going on, but I felt so frustrated. But yeah, I got the lock and we still ended up winning that one. Interesting too, I just, as we watch these reality shows, as we watch Survivor specifically, the people on the show, like I said, the integrity of the show is up here. And I say that because like people are sometimes like, oh, they probably manufacture the drama, or they probably like kind of instigate something, don't they? Like speaking of the producers, the directors or something. And I'm like, dude, no, like every person out there is starving, tired, like too hot or too cold, too wet, or just like whatever. So
Yeah, well, I just liked it because it was inspiring to me that you never gave up. I mean, finding an alternate solution, that's totally allowed. I mean, how many people become a CEO or they're trying to do a startup, whatever, and they hit a roadblock and like, okay, well, I guess I just wasted $10,000 because it can't be done. And then there's people like you and other entrepreneurs that will find a way to charge through a brick wall. Is there any life hacks to get there, or does that just come naturally to you?
if you want to start a company, you want to like found or CEO a company, there are going to be way more obstacles than you ever imagine. Like imagine the most amount of obstacles you can imagine, then times it by 10. Like that is how many obstacles that are going to come to pass in the first year. And there's not really any way to prepare for, there's definitely no way to prepare for every obstacle. So you have to your point, prepare to not stop when there's obstacles. That's the only answer. And so I guess, I don't know, it kind of comes back to, I mentioned like been an athlete and competitor forever. I think that instilled in me, especially cross country and track, and running is a fun, like almost an easy sport because it's like, it comes down to who can take the most pain. And so I think I've been prepared maybe through that just to know that you don't stop because of pain. You win because of pain.
And I would think people that perceive it as less painful also have an advantage. And is there a mindset going into it that you've learned to see that makes it more bearable?
Yes, 100%. I don't view obstacles or pivots as a mistake or like like a surprise even. We are going to have obstacles, but the start with the best chance of making it is one that says obstacles will happen, problems do arise, and that's not a surprise. That is the fact of startups, and we're going to get through it.
to me, it's been helpful to think at least everyone else has to deal with the same problem.
Mm-hmm. And
or every other runner's hurting this much.
exactly. And one thing is, like, I took investor money early on. If it was my own money, I might be tempted when I come to an obstacle. I might be a little tempted to be like, I guess it's not going to work. I won't put in more of my own money. But like, because I've already taken investor money, I'm like, okay, well, if it's not that path, then maybe it's that path. And I've had to pivot actually multiple times since starting. I've thought that the client was going to be this. For instance, I'll give you an example. So one of my startups is AI infrastructure in the real estate vertical. But when I first started it, it's actually evolved a lot. So one of the first starts was I had been doing real estate investing on my own, like without banks and realtors. Like there's interesting ways to get around it and legally invest in real estate without having to borrow money from banks and without having to use realtors. But it just means I have to like take on a lot of paperwork and responsibility and liability and, finesse different types of relationships to create the financing opportunities that I need to accomplish my goals. I systematized it. I was like, hey, this is a great way to buy and sell property without the need for bank and realtors, because banks and realtors take a lot of the margin when you're in a real estate transaction. So if we can not have to pay banks and realtors essentially for every transaction of property, that's so much more money staying in the community, staying in the pockets of the sellers and the buyers. And so I thought this was a great idea. And I wanted to, since I had systematized it, I wanted to build it into a scalable opportunity that a lot of people could make use of. And I thought that that would be widely accepted, and it just wasn't. People don't want, it was taking too much education. People don't want to learn the legalities of it. They don't feel comfortable working through and taking on the responsibility and the liability, and they don't feel comfortable. And so I had to pivot. I was like, okay, I'm never, ever, ever going to get enough scalability on this systematized version of buying and selling property without banks and realtors. But how can I use a similar framework and find a true market? Who do people trust? They already trust a realtor. They already want to buy and sell with realtors. So we pivoted the product into a transaction management tool with all these interesting AI components for realtors, transaction coordinators, and brokerages. So we've had to pivot along the way, even though we thought we had something. And a pivot is a good thing. It means that idea wasn't going to work. This idea has a better chance of working.
Yeah. As long as you don't do that too often that you lose track of your progress.
The companies that last are the ones that pivot the most, probably.
Well, I can see that. I just trying to make a distinction between pivoting because you know you have to and pivoting because it's hard.
Change your mind or
like if I'm trying to build a website and I want to use WordPress and WordPress is hard and Replit seems easy, then I might go to Replit, and then I realize there's a bunch of issues with Replit. I didn't realize they're there, and then I'm right back to WordPress. I've wasted 8 hours on. But I did want to ask you about that first episode where you were protecting your ally, which was fascinating to me and also a little bit scary. Like, I need to make a mental note right now to never become Michelle's enemy. And yeah, so almost everyone on the island wanted Figgy gone, and you were the first person that said, that's not good for our alliance. We need that person on this island. And then all of a sudden there's this flip where everyone's like, oh yeah, maybe we should keep Figgy on the island. And so you effectively convinced the entire island by you speaking up and saying something that we're going to have somebody else voted out, and caught everyone by surprise. So I was going to ask you, what's your method for convincing somebody? Because I'm not really that good at getting people to change their minds, but you seem to have a knack for it.
Interesting. Great question. So it was episode 2. Well, so it had built up from episode 1, obviously, but in episode 2, it was going to be an 8-2 vote. We were going to vote out Figgy, and the only people outside of the vote were going to be Taylor and Figgy.
Right.
And then, largely due to my efforts, it switched to a 7-3 vote, and it voted out Mari. And so, really, I guess you can kind of see the way that we maneuvered that. It had to be different for every person. So it's kind of a know your audience sort of thing. I couldn't use the same argument for Michaela as I could for Will, as I could for, anybody. So as I could for Hannah, so like there's different people that had to be finessed in a different way, right? So I guess a big thing is just knowing your audience, what's important to them, and how can you make it a win-win? Because ultimately, they have to view it as good for themselves in order to change their vote. And so it kind of also circles back to that idea of FaceTime. How much are you talking to these people? Because the more you talk to them, the more... Have you read that book, Jonathan Haidt? I think it's called The Righteous Mind.
No.
So it's a really good book about, and it kind of exposes why people believe the things they do about whether it's religion, politics, whatever, values, different things. And it's really about politics, but like you can see how it kind of spans over many categories. And essentially it comes down to people believe like the people around them. And so if you were to... That's why most cities are one way, rural are another way. Certain families believe similarly. And so like... people believe like the community around them. And so if you can be the community around somebody, you can change their mind, even just a little bit. And so by speaking up. And so, yeah, so I think it would be spend time, know them, and then show them how it can be a win-win. And also I would say being passionate about the topic. People are drawn to energy and passion. And so like if you can passionately tell them about like why this is a win-win, it's more likely to like magnetize and draw them to your point of view.
That sounds about right. That makes a lot of sense. Okay. Yeah, that's almost an existential crisis though, like to think that people believe whatever the people around them believe.
It was surprising to read, but he like gives receipts. He like shows how that's pretty much the case. Like we would all love to believe that we came to our conclusions through logic and reason, but we actually use much less logic and reason than we would like to think.
Then where would you go on a search for truth?
I do at least two things. One, gathering information from a variety of sources. And then two, testing that information in whatever way I can. So it's almost a scientific method, but with things that are not necessarily scientific. So that was my my journey in faith even. My faith journey was that I, at 23 years old, prayed to whatever God would hear me. I didn't know if there was one God or more. I didn't know who there was, what there was, and I was truly open to any answer that I could come to that felt true. So I would pray very, like, I would say humbly and openly to whatever God would hear me. And it was more like, I pray to the God who created me, because I believe that a God created me. So that is who I'm praying to. And then I'd like pray.
Yeah.
And I was asking for truth. And I remember reading, I think it was a portion of the Old Testament in the Bible. And it was like this time when I think God does like a bunch of miracles for, I think it was Elijah, one of the prophets. And it was like bizarre, like fantastical story of these miracles. And I remember being like, really? And actually, I wasn't questioning whether or not that could happen. I was like, if a God created me and everything I've ever seen, touched, tasted, felt, smelled, like whatever, if God created all this, of course he can manipulate it. I view it like a programmer. If there was a program, if we're in a simulation, which actually isn't that much different than the creation story, if there was a programmer that programmed everything, of course they can go in and manipulate the code. So like, so it's not hard for me to believe that a God that created could do these miraculous things. The hard part for me to believe was that any Christians I knew believed it. Because if I believed it, my prayers would be extraordinary. If I believed that the God that I am praying to can do this and is willing to do this, then my prayers would look extraordinary and my life would be extraordinary. And somehow, and I don't have any way to just explain this, but essentially I felt all of a sudden that I had faith in this God that knows his people, listens to them, and interacts on, like, or intervenes on their behalf, sometimes at least. And I remember, though, kind of making an agreement in my head, because that's a big step to, like, put your faith in something, anything, like, outside of yourself. It's a big step. And I remember saying, okay, I believe this is true, and I'm going to be in it 100%. I'm going to do what it seems like this book is saying to do, and I'm going to not do the things it seems like this book is saying not to do. I'm going to interact with God the way that this book seems to encourage you to interact with God. But in 10 minutes or in 10 years, if I find out it's wrong, I'll walk away, knowing I was in it 100%. And my mind was blown every day since. Maybe not every day, but like 1,000 times over. My mind was blown at the like, guess and check, correct, guess, check, correct, guess, check, correct. So gathering evidence, gathering sources, hearing all sorts of perspectives, and then testing it.
I could talk about for an hour just about this. I think somebody that's a little bit more open than you more open like you. They might open a book like The Case for Creator, and then they might go fact check it. And for me, opening that book, it was more validation. And then when I got into concepts of evolutionary biology and stuff like that in college, I was pressed because some of the arguments were there, and some of them were by Christians, like Francis Collins, big fan of that guy. But I mean, you get a different narrative, and then suddenly you've seen the other side, and you're not sure what to think. The interesting thing is that people that grew up being taught biology, whether Christian or not, a lot of times they don't even seem to think twice about whether or not the evolutionary narrative they're reading is true. So I think it's kind of the same on both sides. And the interesting thing about scientists that I've been building up to is that I wonder how many scientists are just as biased in that sense of this is the way it is. This is what I've always believed, and I can't accept a different reality.
No, I completely agree.
Yeah.
Just to piggyback on that a bit, I believe that and I see that. I believe every like vertical of learning, whether it's biology, physics, history, like there's so much that we cannot actually test and prove. We have to take on faith at some level.
Yeah.
And so literally, so this might come as a shock to some people, I think, but like I don't know how the earth was created. I don't know if evolution happened or if God created each in their own kind. It doesn't matter to me though, because I know that I know God. I know that I know the creator. So if he wanted to use evolution, he did. And if he wanted to create kind by kind, he could have. Yeah. So it doesn't bother me, I guess. It doesn't bother me one way or the other, because I feel like I've gone back to the first principle of, I feel like I have truly interacted with and do constantly interact with the creator. And so it doesn't matter all of these answers. I would love to have them, but I don't know if we can.
Another thing I noticed about you on Survivor was that no matter what happened, you were always smiling. And I was just curious. I mean, have you ever been through something that was so devastating or something that was so dark, like a time of depression where it was harder to smile?
Yes. And so I would actually say, I feel like the one thing about the edit that I received on Survivor that I don't like, I actually felt like they didn't show that through the edit very much, but I'm glad you still saw it. I'm glad you still saw like happiness or smiling despite circumstances. And I would say that that's typical of me, but not, like it definitely hasn't always been. And there's definitely been times of life that I've gone through depression, some of them more serious than others. Some of them were, I think all of them were like related to circumstance. And so like when I was younger, I had gone through actually like assault, and it was devastating to me. It like turned my whole world upside down, and all of a sudden I couldn't trust anything anymore. I couldn't trust other people for obvious reasons. And I also couldn't trust myself, because this was the first time in life that like I couldn't just work hard enough to get out of it. It was honestly probably a couple of years of not being able to go back to school, not being able to, just kind of live a normal life for a couple of years. And I didn't have joy for those years. I didn't know God at the time. I maybe thought I did, or I thought that or at least I knew what I was taught growing up about God, but the stuff I was taught growing up about God was not what I was finding to be real. Like I wasn't feeling comfort or peace that surpasses understanding, or all these things that you hear about in church. I wasn't feeling those things despite me reaching out for it. I felt like I was reaching into a dark room with nothing there. After a couple years, there was kind of a resolve. Life felt 1,000% different. There was kind of, there was this moment that I remember texting my friend saying, all of a sudden I have joy and I'm so happy. I'm enjoying going swing dancing or, whatever it was. Is this what normal people feel like? And so I remember that was a dark time. I also went through a dark time kind of early on in my work in like missions, because it felt like I was working so hard and could not accomplish what I was trying to. The job is never ending. There's always going to be suffering in the world. And so it felt like there was a time I was like mad at God, like, God, do I care more than you? Because I'm working my butt off here and there's still so much suffering. If I had your power, there wouldn't be. I would have worked so hard, it'd be got done by now. That's kind of how I felt. And it felt so deflating to work so hard and just know that it's a drop in the bucket of suffering. The third time was more recent, was within the past few years. I had married someone who broke my trust in every way possible, and in some ways really devastatingly. I had felt very hurt all along the way in the 3 years of being married to this person. And so then, and I had during that time prayed a lot and fasted a lot and again tried really hard to fix all the problems. I'd go to pastors and they would say, like, pray over his desk every day, pray over your bed every night, pray over his closet every day. Okay, so I'd do all the things. I'd read all the marriage books. I would fast. And actually at the height of my fasting is when some remarkable things came to light that brought a lot of just understanding to the hurt and betrayal and devastation. Then I dated someone really good. And there was this moment when there was this guy on the street who maybe was under the influence of something. He was yelling at walls and body checking posts and stuff. And then looked at me and started walking towards me, talking, saying something to me. And obviously that's scary. Oh no, now I'm the object of whatever he's yelling at. And the guy I was dating, Jimmy, not even a half second goes by. Jimmy comes up and just grabs the guy and walks him around the corner. And I don't see him for 5 minutes. Jimmy comes back and it's everything's okay. It's he was able to totally take control of a situation. The reason this actually sent me into depression, I know this is weird because that was a good thing, but the reason it sent me into depression was because I had felt like I had prayed and begged God for help for years when there was somebody else hurting me daily. And not even a half second goes by and someone who cared for me stepped in and fixed it, didn't let me be abused. I'm like, God, aren't you stronger than Jimmy? Don't you love me more than Jimmy? And so I still to this day cannot sing the songs that say things like, you've always been so good to me, things like that. I'm I can't sing those lyrics. I could sing, you are an amazing God. Thank you for salvation. I believe you took my sins. I believe you love, I can sing the things that I believe are true, but I can't sing certain words because it does not feel like that is what to me it feels like if I loved somebody I wouldn't let them be abused.
I hear you. And there's 10 times I wish I could sing the song Bleeding Out by Imagine Dragons as a worship song. And it's and I think in my mind, a lot of the time it's what I meant. It's hey, I'll do this, but this sucks. And I wish there was more songs written like a lament, but I guess that's not what sells in Christian music.
Interesting. Yeah. But yeah, exactly. I wish there was some more songs that had just more truthful lyrics, because I can't in the integrity in me, I can't sit there and sing blank songs, because when I go to worship God, I am filled up with gratitude for God. And I want to express that.
I was going to ask you, what would you say to somebody that's lost their joy? Because that's something that I've seen in youth ministry, the impact of COVID on young people. I think people in their 20s, I don't know that many people in their 30s and 40s, so I can't speculate as much. But I mean, that's something that I've seen where people are still dealing with the impact of how much that changed everything. And I've had people that I've talked to that it almost seems like there's nothing wrong, at least nothing that they've told me about, and yet they've found themselves in some kind of depression where they don't know how to get out of it. Okay,
so I would say two things, and this is of course being a non-clinical. I don't claim to be a doctor or have advice from licensed therapist or something, but I would say could you go volunteer at a homeless shelter? Could you go take on the position of like project manager at an orphanage or anything, soup kitchen? Like, go find a place that like people actually are having, because you're saying that at least from an external perspective, you can't see why they would be depressed, right? They have like a fairly comfortable American life, you know? And so that's what I would say, go like insert yourself into a position where there is true, deep physical suffering or even emotional suffering. And I think if we're willing to be others focused, there's more chance for gratitude. There's more chance to feel purpose and meaning in your life.
Yeah, that's really good. I mean, that was one of the things that, that was one of the only things that really seemed like it helped with depression. Because, I think, at least for me, when I was depressed, my instinct was find something that makes me happy, like food or some kind of activity. And it really did not work. And like food tasted like ash, and a lot of different activities didn't really do anything. But then when I could do something for somebody else, then that was where I started to feel real joy. So yeah, I love that you say that. The whole theme of the season, Gen X versus Millennials, was fascinating to me. And it was fun to see, in retrospect, there's powerful people like lawyers and, David was a screenwriter, something like that. Yeah, I don't remember what else that was powerful that people did, but they were talking about how millennials don't have that mindset, and there was one really wise person, I think, first episode, Ken was saying, don't underestimate them. They've grown up in this world and they're adaptable. And it's funny to see where he ended up, surrounded by two millennials, and he was the only one that realized that and made it that far. But to see you in retrospect, even though you've gone through some kind of a non-traditional route, I don't see you becoming a CEO if you started doing a job that was going to let you climb a ladder. I don't see you starting your own business and having equity in it. Something else might eventually get you where you're making something, but you're making a lot of money, but I don't see that bringing to where you're building something and building value on your own. And most people that go into like 9-to-5 job or go to college, whatever it is, if they don't have the entrepreneurial mindset, they're just going to end up doing the traditional wealth building strategy that has a cap on it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so the thing that I agree about with like the people who made the season, Gen X versus Millennials, there is a true difference. And of course, everything is nuanced, right? But there is a difference between Gen X and Millennials. And Gen X was kind of the last generation in which the old paradigms or the old directives led to success. Gen Xers, there's a lot of Gen Xers that are materialistically successful because they stuck to the formula. And just about anybody that sticks to the formula in that generation and above, it leads to some level of like
comfortability,
comfort and success. Not so for millennials. Like the formula of like go to college, get a great degree, and then you can go into corporate and like climb the ladder. That's just not true anymore. Most people that I know that have a degree don't work. In fact, I don't know if I know one person. No, one of my brothers works in the field that he studied, and that's finance. So there are certain degrees, certain paths, like medical or law. There's certain paths that you have to go through the formula, and the path is laid out. You do have to go through the step 1 to get step 2 to get step 3, and so forth, and you can end up on a path to success. The majority, though, of degree paths are not like that anymore. I'm not going to do it the way that I saw the formula being laid out in front of me. Whether that was because we intuited that wasn't going to work out, or because we just had different ideas and said, I'm going to try it a different way. I'm not sure.
Well, it's interesting to me because that's kind of how people look at my generation, Gen Alpha now. And in some ways I see, don't hate me, my generation, but yeah, so I think part of it is knowing that the world's changing so fast, so why should I try to do something that I don't know if it's going to work? But
it's true.
I think that's what every older generation is going to say about the younger generation. So that was my takeaway when I saw Gen X roast millennials. I'm like, yeah, well, everyone's going to say that. And then in a few years, they're going to be CEOs like Michelle. And so, there is that. I think people go through that goofy phase sometimes. Like, I got to figure things out. I got to enjoy my 20s or whatever that is. And then they become insanely productive people later on or whatever that is. And finding a life partner at that stage isn't a waste of time necessarily either. But when it when it comes to Gen Z and Gen Alpha, they've got a different world than you grew up in or I grew up in or whatever. But what would you say to Gen Z and Gen Alpha? Or say let me change that question. You're 18 right now. You're a Gen Z. You're close to Gen Alpha. What are you thinking about? Knowing what you know now, what are you trying to do, and how are you going to try to exist in this AI world?
Ooh. I think I would learn how to learn how. Does that make sense?
I think so. Like generalist.
Well, learn how to be a specialist. Like, learn how to learn how. Like, learn how to stay. So, AI is constantly changing. Every month, there's a better thing to help you do something better and quicker and cheaper. And if you're not intentionally keeping up with it, you're missing out and you're losing out. Even if you tried it 3 months ago, the things that are available now are way better than 3 months ago. So if it didn't work for you 3 months ago, it might work for you now. So like, and that hasn't been the case for until now. So because things are changing so rapidly, you have to learn how to be somebody who learns quickly and tests things out and stays ahead. Also, this is such an interesting time in history because similar to when the internet happened, I believe AI, this is like a similar moment. This is a similar inflection point where when the internet happened, all of a sudden there was this massive opportunity for entrepreneurs to say, ooh, internet, what could this mean? What could this look like? How could I build something using it? How could I build something on it? How can I build something that helps other people get on it or use it? So like there was so much opportunity. Same exact moment right now with AI. This is the moment to be thinking, ooh, what is possible? What could I build? How could I get this being used in a certain vertical that I'm interested in or know really well? Like this is that moment. This is that inflection moment that we were too young to like get involved with internet or, there's lots of those throughout history, but this one is a big one for us.
So for somebody that doesn't know, go back to the vertical thing because I'm
Sure.
still. What does that mean?
Oh, sorry. So yeah. So, any sort of like category of anything. So, real estate vertical, finance vertical, all these different like industries. All of them now, like most of them are using antiquated, like old, I guess what we could look at like old-fashioned software. It was made before what I call new AI, before generative AI was popular, before large language models were popular and usable to everyday people, before agentic AI was usable for normal people.
Sure. Okay. Well, what did you decide to do with your company? I mean, what does your company produce?
Yeah. So I have two startups. One is in AI infrastructure for real estate. And essentially, it's a reimagining real estate software. Within my startup, we're looking forward and being like, okay, where do we think technology is headed? What can we build right now to like meet it?
Genius.
Yeah. So we want to be leaders in real estate technology, real estate like transaction technology. And so we've even tried not to look too much at old software because then that gets in your mind, oh, so like Henry Ford, he didn't go look at horses to make a car, right? He came up with a better new idea with technology that was available. And so instead of looking at other softwares and competitors, which we do have like competitive analysis, of course, on all these other software, but like we aren't looking at them to show us what to build. We're trying to look at where technology is and where it's headed, and saying, okay, drawing lines between these, what could we build that would be ultimately useful to real estate professionals, whether that be agents, transaction coordinators, or brokerages. For instance, our software, in addition to being able to essentially do a lot of your job for you, like generate your emails and send them to the right stakeholders at the right time during your transaction process, without you having to prompt it, without you having to do all this. Like it can read through your contracts and then like stay one step ahead of you, making sure that like you don't drop the ball in any of these deadlines. But in addition to that, we're building our interface as an NLI, as natural language interface. So sure, we, like old generation software, you had to click things, type things, know which tab to click, drag and drop. And you'll still be able to do that on ours. We actually have a beautiful interface, but you could also just talk. You can just talk to our app, our software, and be like, hey, this is what I want to get done today. And then it does it for you. So,
wow.
Yeah, so we're changing what it looks like to interactive software.
And as far as going forward, which makes a lot of sense, but I've heard of companies like quantum computing, and some of these companies, they're building something for technology that isn't necessarily viable yet. I mean, do you run into issues with that? With, we're building for something that doesn't exist yet. How do we make it profitable in the meantime?
So that's a really great question. So we have been working on something, and I won't talk too much about it, specifics, because we're still building it. But yeah, there is a piece of our software that we're wondering if we're a little too ahead for. There's no question in my mind whether we're gonna get there. It's just whether or not we're gonna get there in the next 3 months. So I don't have any, like, for me, and I think that's something that an entrepreneur or like a founder, CEO has to have, that mentality of tech can catch up to me if it's not there already. The truth, though, is, of course, you have to have a product that works in its current state for your current users. We're not going to launch it until, of course, it's usable.
So nobody copies it.
And you don't want to, like, if it just doesn't work well enough, obviously you don't want to launch it once it's perfect. That means you waited too long. But you do want to, like, launch it when there's actually some benefit to the user, some value to the user. And so, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Now it's making sense. So, assume I know nothing.
Okay.
Like, this whole conversation didn't happen, but you're trying to tell me from the ground up, like, I'm 25, I'm a nurse, I've got this, that experience. How do I start from here?
Okay. So you want to start a tech company?
Start a tech company.
Okay. So I would say first you have to ideate. First you have to know what problem you're solving. The bigger the problem, the more valuable your solution. But not to say that you might have heard go niche, get rich. So you could try to go create something that is usable to so many people. Think of like Slack or social media. It's ubiquitous. It can be used across so many industries. Or you can think of something very, very specific. I'm trying to think, like Subi. My startup is for transaction coordinators, real estate agents, and brokerages. And there's a book I would highly, highly, highly recommend. So, of course, also just books. Read a lot. Read 0 to 1. Read Lean Startup. Read The Cold Start Problem. Read The Write It. That one is so interesting as far as validation. Validate your idea before you go spend money on it. See how many people you can get to put skin in the game before you put any money in the game. Or before you go raise money is even better. How much traction can you get? And so you don't have to like sell a product. You have to show that the product can be sold. That's the part I wish I would have done. Like if I were to reverse 9 months or 6 months, I don't know, many months, I would literally just go build a click-through prototype of my app, put it online, and see how many people click, I want to buy this, you know? And then that would be able to be like, oh, okay, for every, 25 people that funnel through the website, we get one person that clicks buy now, or, whatever, or more information, or whatever it is, or yeah, I'm going to leave my, my email address to get on this wait list.
So you would build a website and measure how many of the people that come to the website click on the thing in order to
try to buy it. Yeah.
Sure.
And then have a little thing that pops up that's like, oh, it's not available yet in your area, or, and then maybe give them, oh, but because you clicked on it, we'll give you, 5% off for the first year when it's ready. And so I would say ideate, validate, and then start building and go raise money. Not every venture needs to raise money, but I would say you can really step up your game because you can hire the best. You can hire really good people instead of like relying on your friend to fill in this gap and whatever else, you know. So I'd say raise money and get advisors and mentors. Oh my goodness, advisors and mentors. Like do not think you can do it yourself, and do not think you could do it just by like figuring it out along the way. Like there's thousands, millions of people who have done it before, maybe in just a different vertical or a slightly different vertical. Go find people that you can like rely on for help, and then don't be embarrassed or ashamed to tell them all of the obstacles and like failures you've been seeing, because they will be able to be like, oh, I've seen this, so we had a thing like this. Make sure you don't do XYZ, or if you do XYZ, you're gonna have to go and do this.
Do they have communities to find mentors for things like this? Because I'm thinking of a couple online on a smaller scale. I believe Liam Otterly, he's a YouTuber. I think he has 500,000 subscribers, and he does AI agents. And so he's got a community based around finding connections for, I want to do an agent startup, I want to do an AI startup.
Go to like tech conferences.
Gotcha.
You know, go to tech conferences, talk to founders there, talk to like a lot of investors go to these conferences, and a lot of investors want to like, so for like VCs, venture capitalists and investors are often like very often looking for deal flow, right? And the way they assess deal flow, at least early stage investors are betting on the jockey, not the horse. So they don't care so much about the idea. They want to know the jockey. They want to know the founder. And they want to say, is this the kind of person that can navigate obstacles, seek mentorship, then like be teachable about that mentorship, and then like execute? Can they plan out and then execute properly? And so I would go make friends with, and this is I guess what I do, but accidentally, I just make sure I'm in a lot of spaces that there's a lot of potential investors, and then and a lot of potential investors are also people who have already been successful. They've already built a, $2.8 billion. One of my advisors built co-founded $2.8 billion SaaS product. And so, in the nursing space actually. And so, it's incredible to have that person in our sphere, because not only there's so many things that I can call him and be like, hey, this is going on, I need your help. Hey, what would you do about this personnel problem I'm having? Hey, what would you do about this? Hey, like have somebody that can just give you that advice. And also being an investor, he's invested in multiple ways. Like he cares because he wants his return, but also he cares because now we're like in relationship. I can like ask questions. He can like actually be value add and use like the wisdom that he gained over years and like infuse it. And like, I can just imagine if I were at that stage, I would get a lot of joy from being able to pour into other people as well, going along the same journey.
I can see that. What was the application that he made in the nursing space?
It's called ShiftKey. So he co-founded ShiftKey.
You know the guy that made ShiftKey?
Yeah.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's like, that's the one that's like Uber Eats for nurses, right?
Yeah, exactly. He's on our board of directors. He's on our board of directors. He's an investor and also an advisor, and like comes to meetings, helps out. Like, yeah,
Dang. Yeah, I know people that use it. I mean, you can pick up a shift at your own hospital normally, but then if you get on ShiftKey, I mean, I think there's an approval process or something because they want someone trustworthy that's actually going to show up. But then you just look at a shift at any hospital in the area, right? And then you just pick the one that you want. And It's great because if you don't like the hospital, you never have to go back there. And a lot of times their rates are higher than where you've been working. And I think a lot of people just like the flexibility of something like that. So genius idea. Yeah.
Yeah. And there was a lot of issues along the way, a lot of obstacles that they had to like navigate to get where they're at. But like find helpers and advisors. Like you meet someone and you kind of feel out like, is this person inclined enough to me that I could ask questions and get away with stealing some of their time to like get wisdom, And then like you find those people, and most people are very like generous with their wisdom, I would say. That's at least my experience. And so I would just, put yourself in spaces that you meet people that have done it or are doing it and are further along, and then just,
How do I show competence in that space? Because a lot of people tell me I could be 19, and I wonder how hard it's going to be for me to build credibility at something like that.
I'm just going to say so as like a female founder who didn't graduate college, somehow I have credibility. I also have been told I look younger or acted more immature than my age. So I would say, uh, first of all, you don't need to build credibility. You need to show that you're teachable, because, like, you need to show that you're teachable and then that you can execute. So I don't know if you need credibility. You can build credibility by saying, hey, I'm trying to do this idea. What would you recommend for this particular thing? And then they say, well, you could do one of two things. I would recommend this. This is what we did in my company, but I could also see this. And then you say, you know what? I'm going to try that. And then you go do it. And then you can come back and be like, hey, look, okay, so I executed it that way. Here's how it went. We still have this little problem. How do I deal with, so like, just by like absorbing information and using that to recalibrate your path, I think that's what builds credibility. To like, yeah, receive, implement, execute, and then like reassess and keep moving forward.
And aside from that, I was just wondering how long you've been working at this, because I'm kind of impatient, and I mean, like a lot of people, right? And I think a lot of times that's the difference between something that becomes really big and something that gets big quickly and then stays that size. How much time have you spent since the beginning of realizing you wanted to do a startup? How long did it take you to get to the point where, well, actually, what level is your startup up at first?
Yeah, so we are so both of my startups are very early stage. One, though, is much further along. We're teetering on an MVP, which is minimum viable product, meaning, and that sounds like less than it is. Like, minimum viable product typically just means, what is the product, the base level of the product that is valuable and like people will pay for it, And so we're teetering, we're getting towards that edge. Right now, we should have our product like launched and being paid for within 3 more months. We've been building for like 6 months. It's July. We've been building since January. However, I started raising money and doing R&D last year. So I originally pitched who became my VC, in like May of last year. Now, a VC, so a venture capitalist, isn't going to just like hear a pitch and invest next Tuesday. Like, they're going to hear a pitch, talk to you, have you send over a financial model, maybe a pitch deck, ask you a bunch of questions. Like, it's going to take, and then maybe like do some sort of diligence on you or your team or whatever you have built so far, if there's anything. They're going to want to look over legal documents. Like, so it's a big process. So that started back in May. And actually the first thing I ever pitched was what's now my second startup. It was a decentralized investing platform, essentially like a decentralized private equity. And it solves a million problems, and it's a really fun thing to work on. But that one is going to take probably another 2 years. Well, hopefully less than that. 1 year. If everything goes as planned, it could take as little as another year.
All right, ease up a little bit on the Greek, because I'm still...
Oh, okay.
So, no, I mean, I'm sure you're doing great. I just... still a little over my head, but so...
What please, like, ask me a question. I'll break down what I can.
Yeah, so let me see if I can... yeah, it's not you, it's me. So let's see here. Well, I'm curious about this fundraising process. Like, how do you start with that?
Yeah. Okay, so... And also, you'd ask how much time. So this has been my full-time thing for over a year now. This is what I spend all my time doing. And I think I've probably gone a little slower than other people because we've had to pivot a little bit. And I had to restructure teammates and different things. And so, like, we are probably a tad slower than most people. But I think we're also building a really, really amazing foundation. And so... to your question, though, about raising money, it was a lot more intimidating before I started doing it. So, but I had a background in nonprofit, and in the nonprofits that I worked at, we had to raise our own salary, as you probably are familiar with. We had to raise our own salary and donations. And so I had to go around to like friends and family and churches, individuals who like maybe had a good heart and wanted to see the work that I was doing get done. And so I'd go and like kind of like pitch to them and be like, so do you care about this kind of work? Would you donate $100 a month to this thing that would pay my salary and my like work expenses to, have this XYZ outcome? And here's what I'll say is fundraising for a nonprofit is much harder than fundraising for a for-profit, which you can kind of imagine. Like, if the person's expecting return, it's a lot easier for them to like give up a bigger amount of money than if there's no return other than like you feel good about yourself and there's good getting done in the world, which I'm excited about. But
So how does that return work for them? I mean, do you have to sell them equity?
yeah. Oh, good question. Thank you. So yeah, so the way it works is essentially you agree on a valuation. You agree, hey, because my idea is this, even though it's not built yet, you know, we can agree on a valuation of 2 million or 3 million, whatever, some amount that says, hey, you give me $200,000 and I will give you 10% of my company at a valuation, because that's, so if you choose a valuation, let's say you guys negotiate and you choose a valuation of 2 million to start off. So this is like day one, out of the gate. There's nothing built. It's just idea and a hard worker. You could probably find a lot of investors that would agree with you at a $2 million valuation. And then you would show them maybe an equity plan or something of like, so here's, here's how I expect it to break down. I'm going to be giving out another 20% to my, an options pool of advisors and future teammates. I'm going to bring on a co-founder and give them 20%. I'm going to keep another X% to sell off more equity in the future to raise more money, and so forth. So you kind of have a plan of like, how much money can I raise versus how much equity am I giving away, so that the cap table is very important. So the cap table is who owns what part of the company, who owns what percentage of the shares of the company. And so, it's very, very, very important. And I would just really, really encourage anybody who's raising money to talk with somebody. Like, I would even love to sit down and have a in-depth conversation further to dive into this about like how to protect your cap table. And because I have definitely made mistakes along the way. And now there's certain equity that like you can never get equity back. So the cap table is so important, and just like find a good mentor who understands cap table, understands like valuations, and can help kind of navigate through it. But yeah, it's a conversation with the investor, and usually you're gonna go to a lot of people, right? You're gonna have to talk to a lot of potential investors, and maybe friends and family put in $5,000 or $10,000 along the way as well, and they get the same amount, whatever round you kind of raise in rounds. So like I raised a $255,000 round last summer, and that was at a 3.5 million valuation. And there were other nuances for why that was the agreed upon valuation. And then this year I raised $620,000 at a 8 million valuation. And then so you kind of raise in like groups. You negotiate the valuation with your investors, and then take money and then build for a while, and then you try to negotiate a higher valuation with investors, raise money, and so forth.
That was so great. Thank you for that breakdown. I see how the equity works and how much the equity is worth. And I'm assuming as the valuation goes up, even though you can't get the equity back, the equity that you have left becomes more valuable.
Yes, of course. And there's dilution that can happen. You can always sell more equity, but you can also make new shares. And now, because there's more shares, everybody's shares are worth a little bit less. You split the shares. Yeah, essentially. Okay. But you're not talking about publicly traded stock at this point. Correct. No. So IPO, like an initial public offering, would be way, way later typically. Though there's people that figure out ways to like mini IPOs along the way. That's kind of a separate thing, though. That's not a typical SaaS or something. SaaS product being software as a service. And most of the publicly traded stocks I've seen are worth close to $1 billion, like several hundred million usually. So you're a long ways from there at this stage in the game. Okay. What's the advantage to trading it publicly? Liquidity for your shareholders, I suppose. Like, because you don't have to, like in a startup, you can't decide next Tuesday to sell your shares. But if it's a publicly traded company, you can. So the only people you can sell shares to are investors right now. Right. I can only sell to accredited investors. And so there's like guidelines for that. It's something like over $1 million in net worth, not including your primary residence, or if you make more than $200,000 a year. Yeah, and I believe you have to do that for at least 2 years. Something like that, yeah. You have to qualify in those ways. Now, it is self-attestation, so like if somebody comes in and is like, yes, I meet those standards, they can click a box. It's like, yes, I meet those standards. They don't have to like take a test or something. It sounds like you're locked in until the point where the company goes public. Interestingly, no. So there's a handful of ways that you could see return on your investment if you invest into a startup. So one of the ways would be if ever they decide to do like distributions, which isn't usually common, but it's totally possible. Maybe they decide to distribute profit. They have a lot of profit for some reason and they aren't using it to scale, and so they decide to distribute. That could happen. It's probably not very common. I don't know. And then there's another thing, selling their shares on secondary market, essentially. So what it is would be like, if you own 10% of my company and you bought those, you bought that 10% when it was worth $10 million in valuation, but now I'm raising at a $100 million valuation. You could say, oh, you're raising $10 million at a $100 million valuation. I'll throw some, if you're like, we could oversubscribe essentially and sell some of your shares. You could take some of your equity off the table. You could say, raise a little more and I'll take 5 million right now. Oh, of course, and acquisition, sorry.
Acquisition.
So like there's possible distributions, there's possible like secondary market, there's possible acquisition, and there's possible IPO. Those are like the main ways you would see return from a startup investment.
But I get a sense that's not the dream for you, because what I understand, I got this from Morgan Housel, who's a financial expert, and he said the dream for a lot of people is to get between $7 and $10 million, because if you're at that point, you almost never have to worry about money again for things most people do. I mean, you can't buy a private jet or something and expect to keep all of it. You can only buy maybe 1 or 2 private islands. But I mean, yeah, so I mean, $10 million, you can go pretty much forever. I mean, properly invested, you're probably giving you about up to $1 million income per year on that. Like, what if I bought real estate or stock or whatever that was? But for you, I sense that your aspirations are a little bit higher. Like, you want to see something that changes the world, and you don't want to just get it to the 10 million cap and then sell.
Yeah. So I mentioned to you that I have 2 startups. One, a C Corp, which is that you're kind of more your typical vehicle for like a SaaS company, for a software company. And that with that, the AI infrastructure company, Subi, I hope for an acquisition. Like, I hope to be acquired at some point. With my public benefit corporation, my other startup, I'm not necessarily looking for an acquisition. And I think that's the decentralized kind of investing platform. Just meaning that I'm trying to make investing very accessible, cash flow return very accessible to, billions of people, to the whole world. And so with that one, that is maybe more mission driven. And so, like, to your point, I'm not necessarily looking for an acquisition because I want to build something that changes the lives of millions, if not billions of people.
I think what we really need is people like you that have an ethical mindset on how to do business, because if we let all the people get to the top that are driven by greed, or they don't have as much of a conscience, I mean, that probably gets you to the top faster in some ways, but that's not really a world that I want to live in, is that all the people that got to the top are doing it for nothing other than themselves. I mean, I want people like Mr. Beast, and I'm trying to think of some other examples of people that make a lot of money and use it to help other people. Bill Gates. Why did I say Bill Gates?
So agreed that, like, absolutely. I want, there's always going to be bad actors, and I hope that, like, good actors don't get intimidated by the process because they're like, oh, well, the bad actor's always going to win if they're willing to cheat or do something, slightly unethical. They're going to win instead of me. I hope people don't think like that. And I would say, I believe, this is probably like a fairy tale in me, but maybe it's also just like my faith. I believe that goodness has more power than badness. And so I would say that, like, somebody with a goal and like an ethical drive to do something good and change the world in a good way, I feel like that person's going to have a lot more power behind them than somebody just willing to, like, who's only motivated by greed or something. And also, I would say that I was going to say, and now I'm backtracking a little, I was going to say, the more value you add to the more people, like, the more wealthy you'll probably become. However, value can be good or bad. Like, the pornography industry, for instance, I think is extremely harmful to our culture, our society, our communities, the world. Yet it's a highly lucrative industry. So simply becoming wealthy or finding, like, product market fit does not equal being a value in a good way.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I can think of a few other examples, but
Yeah, there's
yeah.
many.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, well, I could talk about them, but I haven't done any real research. But I mean, yeah, it's not that hard to think of an example of something that's profitable and destructive.
Yeah.
But
Or extractive.
as far as being intimidated by the process, how many hours does this usually take you a week? For me, that would be one of the most intimidating things to think, I'm going to be locked into this, and it may actually be harder than med school.
It will be harder than med school. Obviously, I've never been to med school, so I can't say that with 100% certainty. But med school, there's like a path, like you know what to expect and you know what to do, right? There's no path, like there's no boundaries really in like entrepreneurialism. So I tend to be a workaholic. If I'm not sleeping or eating, actually even when I'm eating, I'm working typically. But like if I'm not sleeping, I'm working, and I've had to like be really disciplined to try to take a day off every week, because I believe that it's best to rest a day and let your brain I believe that it's best for humans to rest for one day a week. Don't start a startup if you're not a hard worker. Like if you're not disciplined, because like you do need to do these other things. You do need to have community. You do need to work out. You do need to eat healthy. You do need to, rest. And so you just have to be disciplined, and you have to work hard at the job. So for me, I would say it depends on the week, but anywhere between 50 to 70 hours a week of work. And I think anybody should expect, if you're trying to build something at venture scale, you should expect a 5 to 7 year commitment if you're trying to get acquired. Something like that.
I wonder if that changes in a world where everything changes faster and moves faster.
Yeah, sure. That timeline could be scrunched a little bit, perhaps, for sure.
And then there's speculation about why such a long timeline predicted for quantum computing, because the next level technology, it always seems like the further on you go in time, like oil, internet, AI, like seems to go faster and faster, the time that it takes to build and scale that kind of thing. But 50 to 70 hours is actually less time than I would have thought. And I use med school as an example because that's one of the most extreme kinds of thing to do that I can think of. I mean, I had a friend that went to MIT and Rush Medical School, and she wanted to be a surgeon, and she got into surgery, and she did not complete the residency because she had to do 6 days a week, 14 hours a day. And I mean, she made the decision, like, there's no balance here, and I feel like I'm selling my soul. And so I can respect somebody that makes a decision like that. But what you're describing sounds a little bit different in the sense that you're finding a level of balance with that. And to me, if you're going to do something for 5 to 7 years, you have to find a way to feel like you're living and not dying through that process.
Yes. And you're right. Maybe it is more than 70 hours some weeks, especially like weeks that I'm traveling or at a conference or something, because like you are working probably 16-hour days on those days, because of all of the in-person time. And then you also have to still get your like work done and your emails caught up on in the background, even though you're like with people all day. So there are definitely weeks that are probably closer to like 80 or 90. But I would say like a good rule of thumb is somewhere around 60 that like makes sense for the type of life that is then sustainable.
Sure.
At least for me.
I think the problem that I'm having is we've just talked about how it's really hard for people to get anywhere using the traditional Gen X kind of strategy where you try to climb the corporate ladder or whatever that is. But there's a lot of people that they got married young or they have kids or for whatever reason, those people aren't going to be able to do 80 hours every week and still maintain that life balance. But I've heard stories about people that did startups, like I don't remember his name, but I saw an interview with the guy that designed Snapchat, and
that was a good one.
I think he said
Diary of a CEO.
Yeah,
that was a great one.
Yeah, so he says he has 4 kids, and I was trying to fathom how somebody runs a startup and makes time for 4 kids and a wife.
So I kind of get it. It's because I have multiple startups. I have multiple businesses. Like I have a real estate business that's more just like It's like a lifestyle business. It's not like a venture scale anything. But then I have two that are venture scale. And so I know for a fact, well, I assume I would not be able to juggle all that if I had kids. I don't have kids. I don't even have a dog, I have plants. But and they still die. So like, I kind of treat, I guess like I kind of treat one of my startups as like my family and like my family. And then I treat another startup as like, that's my like 9 to 5-ish type, portion. So it's, yeah. And also then it's like most people, for instance, like watch TV or things like that. I just don't, unless it's part of my friend time. Like I prioritize time with friends, and if the activity is going to be like watching a movie, okay. But like I don't like watch movies or TV on my own, It
seems like you enjoy the process.
I love working. I love and it's because I love what I do. I love building things. I love creating. I love ideating. I love strategizing. I love I love all that.
Do you ever feel burned out? Like, what if I could just get this to that 10 million mark and then just walk away?
Not really.
Okay.
I mean, there's some days that are more frustrating than others.
I'm sure.
But again, back to that idea of like how we talked at the very beginning about just like obstacles. Like if you get frustrated when you get a flat tire, you're probably a person that gets frustrated a lot. But if you get a flat tire and you're like, this is what life is like today. This is my life today. And you can roll with it and just fix your tire, and know that that's part of life. So like I equate that to then like business, like there's going to be those obstacles, and then that is what business is like today. That is what it means to have a startup today, is having to juggle this thing that you haven't juggled before and maybe is not your favorite thing, but like that's what it is today.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does. It also made sense what you said about family. I think I sort of understand how you meant it. You may not have meant it exactly this way, but I think of businesses like, well, I think some people think of their businesses like, I have 5 businesses, I have 5 kids.
Yeah, a little bit.
So I mean, I get that because I've built things, and now that I'm starting to build websites and stuff, I understand what that feels like. I mean, when I built a bow, it took me a lot of hours. I spent a lot of time with a draw knife, a lot of time on YouTube
How long does it take you to build a bow?
It can take at least 40 hours, depending on the kind of bow you're trying to build. If you're trying to build a bow out of something like a board from Home Depot, it's a little bit less time, and it really depends on the level of finesse and refinement that you want to put into the process. I think if you're a professional and you've got machines and you don't want to do it with hand tools like I did, then it's faster, but you won't get the same level of connection to the thing that you've made if you don't spend 20, 30 hours refining it with a draw knife, heating it, bending it, heating it some more. And so the interesting thing to me is a bent bow, like a bow that's deformed, actually hurts me more than a broken bow, because if it breaks, I can start again. But if I've marred it in some way that I can't ever really fix it and get it to its full potential, that's what really sucks for me.
Oh, interesting.
So I'm curious if there's a parallel in business.
I can see that. I can see that because on one hand, like, let's equate a pivot to a broken bow.
Yeah.
If you realize it's not going to work, and so you pivot it, and that means you're going to start with a new piece of wood. Like you're going to, okay, that part's not going to work. This new track will. But if it's just bent, like it's a good idea but not a great idea, I could see that would, like, because now it's like you're kind of still obligated to put time and effort into it.
Exactly.
But it's not necessarily, I see where you're going with that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm also curious about your process where you're talking about, how many people work for your company? Let's start with that.
We're somewhere around 10.
Okay.
So I've kind of, like I said, multiple. And so I have like 10 in my AI infrastructure, approximately that. And then just 1 employee in my real estate. And then my decentralized investing platform will eventually be more, but right now it's just me, and I'll have, within the next few months, it'll probably build out to like 3 or 4. That'll stay smaller for a while.
Okay.
And then all of it, yeah.
So. That's something I've been curious about because I've been interested in vibe coding lately. Like you go into the software and you type it in and it does it for you. And I know it's not that simple. And I watched a video where somebody said vibe coding is trash. You need to give it more context. And I see that because I went on Replit and I tried to build something and it was beautiful. It was like magic. And then you try to actually do something with it and it breaks. And you have no idea what to do with it because you don't understand the coding. If you're me, you just wrote it in natural language. But I'm curious how that works when you're hiring people. They're experts in it. They're AI engineers, coders, people like that. Does that help you hire less people when one person can do more?
So I don't know if I'm hiring less people, but we're getting it done quicker. So a thing that you're probably hearing a lot lately is AI is not going to take your job, but a person using AI is. And maybe that'll change soon, but right now that's definitely the case. I recently hired kind of an interim CTO. So that stands for Chief Technology Officer. So an interim is just like he's temporary. He's absolutely incredible, but he only has times really like nights and weekends right now. But he's so good and so fast at what he does. And it's because, well, a big reason, in addition to having, I think, 19 years of development and also just being an incredibly fast learner and good coder. In addition to that, he knows how to leverage AI, and essentially what maybe would have taken us 2 weeks to like add a new feature, he can do in a day using AI. And so what he uses, I think he uses Junie, which is maybe similar to like Cursor or Copilot or one of these. He says that gets him maybe 80 to 90% of the way. And the interesting thing is here, 3 months ago, that wasn't the case. Like, this is how we talk about tech is changing so rapidly, and certain things that are possible today weren't possible a month ago or 2 months ago. And so knowing that and staying up to date on that has made him incredibly valuable. Instead of taking 2 weeks to add a new feature to our platform, we can do it in 1 day by putting it through AI, getting 80 to 90% of the way there, and then having him go through. And because he's a coder, he can understand what's wrong and what's not connecting and what needs to be changed. So he can go in then and like do all the tweaks and like calibrate it specifically to then be able to like,
And that's terrifying when you look at something like Replit and see what the technology can do, at least to me, maybe not to you. But I wonder, can we or will we likely get to a point where you could just sit at a computer and do all this yourself? You don't need to hire anyone. You build your own business just by typing into a computer.
Probably, maybe. The one thing, it also depends on like how complicated is your idea. Like, yeah, that's a big thing, is how complicated is your idea. If you're trying to create, it depends, like, if you're trying to create an app that's like, rate how cute this puppy is. Yes, absolutely. I think if we're not already there, I think we probably already were there. But like, but then with like things that need, trying to think of an example in ours. Well, I guess maybe ours is just maybe a little bit more of a complicated process. And so right now, at least, it's not possible.
So it sounds like what you're saying is the low-hanging fruit, yes, but it seems like to me, the more we advance, we don't really get satisfied with being able to do like, oh yeah, now I can be one person doing all this by myself because everyone's going to be doing it. Then you got to go for the higher hanging fruit with higher levels of complexity. So potentially, if the complexity of the task continues to rise with the level of the technology, does that mean that coders are safe if they continue?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay.
I believe so, like, because for one thing, so yes, so technology being where it's at, it's becoming easier and easier to be a solopreneur if that's what you want to be. Or to like lean startup method and be very lean and like maybe not try to sell any equity. But for those of us who prefer to raise money and spend it on a good team to build quicker or something, like if that's what you prioritize, which is what I do, for instance, I'm not, if my development budget is $40,000 a month or something, I'm not now saying, ooh, I get to save $35,000 or $30,000 and just hire one person. Okay, I'm not mathing it right, but you get what I'm saying. Instead, I say, okay, now I'm still going to hire the same amount of people, but they can get this much done instead of this much. So our runway is the same financially, but our product is expedited incredibly.
Sure. I appreciate that because people need jobs. So why wouldn't you provide value for somebody else along the way?
It also matters what vertical you're in. So like, I'm in a vertical that has some competitors, in like real estate transaction management. And so I want to be fast. I want to like get ahead and stay ahead of the competition. And so it matters more for me. Like I prioritize the like speed of development rather than saving money on the forefront.
Especially since everyone's going to be doing it, and that gives you an advantage because you've created this moat where me on my computer typing on Replit, unless I've got an insanely good idea that nobody else has thought of, I've got to cut through an insane amount of noise on the internet because everyone can use this technology.
Right.
Whereas you've got an entire team, so the stuff that you're doing, they'd have to have an entire team in order to compete with you.
Yeah.
But as the world's changing, I've also been asking myself this question, is any job safe? It sounds like if you're a coder and you advance with the technology, maybe you're okay.
I think so. But I also know, just because I've been interviewing a lot of developers lately, that not a lot of them are using the technology like they should. They're not utilizing it. Some of them do. Those people are worth their weight in gold. I'm not interested in hiring someone who doesn't use AI. So like one of the questions in every interview is, how do you use AI, or do you use AI in your daily, development? And if so, how? And if the person's like, I mean, it can kind of be helpful. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to hire that person because they're going to be able to do 1/3 what somebody else can do.
Yeah. It's crazy to me how many people are still using the conventional coding, and I don't blame them necessarily because it's hard. Well, I'm not going to assign blame, but yeah, I mean, it's interesting to me when I think about people that are talented that can do things with coding that I don't know how to do, and I go on a site like Upworks and I think, wow, you're so talented. Why are you making $30 an hour on Upworks when I feel like you could do this yourself? And I mean, you could scale the technology, or if you just figured out how to use the right coding software, you could make what people are asking for on Upworks in 10 minutes, and then you could sell it to them straight away. And I've heard of people doing that. It sounds like an interesting idea, but it's interesting to see how different people adapt to the process of change.
And different people, like we're all different. We all have different gifts. We all have different like proclivities. And so like not everybody should be a founder CEO.
Sure.
Some people should be, but not everybody should be. Some people might have the skills, but they're like, I don't enjoy that. I would rather come alongside. Like I've had people tell me, no, I'm a good number 2. Like I want to come alongside somebody with a vision and make it happen. And I'm like, whoa, that's a cool type of person. And it's a good thing that they exist. You know what I mean? Like, so it's a good thing that all these different kinds of people exist, because then we can have like the teams, like your body, we know in the Bible, it says like, we're like a body with many members. Is the nose better than a finger? No, like you both have different functions. And so it's really good that we have fingers. It's really good that we have noses. It's really good that we have like all these different members. And so, I guess I don't lament that there's some people who want to do this and other people who want to do something different.
One person that's been interesting to me lately is I keep talking about Replit, but I mean, watching his interviews is one of the reasons I got interested in Replit, because he's always talking about it. I'm like, what is this technology that I haven't heard of?
Which interviews? Like who was he? Where was he on? I want to catch up on this.
Joe Rogan, Diary of a CEO, and Greg Eisenberg.
Okay. I listened to 2 out of the 3 of those, so I'm surprised I haven't come across it. Maybe I did.
They produce a lot of content, so it's hard to keep up.
That is very true.
One thing that he said that was interesting to me was that he thinks in the future, I hope I'm getting this right, I believe what he said was something along the lines of, we're all going to be entrepreneurs and we're all going to have this capacity to make coding. And that's going to be one of the only things that humans are good for at the point, is having our own agency, because AI will be able to do almost everything that a human can. Well, what's your take on this? Because
I don't think I believe it. Now, obviously, he's probably much smarter than me, but here's where my brain goes. There has been major shifts in technology many times throughout history. And like when the Industrial Revolution happened, everybody's like, oh, well, at least I've heard that everybody was like, oh, there's not going to be any jobs. But what do humans do? We go and do something else. We're incredibly adaptable. We're the most adaptable species on the planet, I think. I don't know. I'm going to go with that, because we can live on every continent. We can figure out how to live off of blubber in the Arctic. We can live on all sorts of different diets and all sorts of different climates. And then like, as technology happens, we adapt. As anything happens, we adapt. So like, I think humans are resilient. I think humans are adaptable. I give us a lot of credit for being creative. Humans love to create, and humans also like humanity. Anything artisan, we like. One reason we like it is because there's like thought, and something about another human putting effort and thought into something makes it automatically more beautiful than if a machine did it, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's always going to be a desire and a value on, and therefore money in, being a real human, doing a real human thing, and producing real human value to the world.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, I can see both perspectives. I mean, on the one hand, the AI will probably get so good that it can synthesize almost anything a human can. It can fool you to think that a human made it. So I don't know if we're going to get into an age of where everything that you create, you have to sign an affidavit that says, I made this, not AI. So, I mean, I believe it was Simon Sinek that I got this from. I saw an interview. He's talking about artists are now being asked to sign affidavits. I made this, not AI.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, but that's a little terrifying to me in the sense that, like, well, I mean, for one thing, an AI could impersonate a human. That's a scary concept that I'm not really that interested in going down that road. But I mean, the other side of this is, I mean, you're right, because I go on YouTube when I'm looking for background music and I see all this AI generated stuff. I'm like, wow, this is so good. It sounds like it was sung by a human, written by a human. Some of it does. And I think if a human had wrote this song and made an album about it, I would want to see more of their stuff. But as it is, there's so much of that stuff out there that we've devalued it because, I mean, the scarcity adds value, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think the video, they had like 1.5 thousand subscribers, which isn't terrible, but they had like 900 videos, and each of their videos had about 30 views on them. So it's like, if a human created 900 videos with this quality of music and whatever it was, even if they were just there making videos every day, singing on their guitar with a microphone like this, and that was it, you would have way more subscribers than this, way more views, because somebody's interested in their personality and all the stuff that they've done. I'm just curious to see how we're going to maintain that authenticity the longer that this goes on.
I think I heard that YouTube just demonetized or is in the process of demonetizing AI generated content.
Genius.
Yeah. So that's a great step.
How will they know at some point?
Yeah, it's a great question. Well, I can tell with, so I'm tired of AI generated content. So much of it is just crap, to be real. And then, like you said, every once in a while you find something that's like, no, it's actually beautiful, or it's cool, or it's like helpful. But there's so much, I would say there's just so much noise. There's like, I'm going to just throw out a stupid number that I'm estimating. 98% of it's crap. And so now all of a sudden we have a bunch of crap content we have to sift through to find the good stuff. Whether it's AI generated or human, we still have to sift through 98% crap.
You see the irony of this though, right? The fact, well, I mean, your company deals in AI generated content in a sense, so it's like not.
I mean, we're not creating like.
You're not creating AI generated. No, yeah. I see the distinction. I'm not saying that's what you're saying at all.
Good technology is always going to be used badly.
For sure.
Anything good is always used bad.
Well, I guess the thing that I was thinking about that provoked that thought was, I mean, I have a website that's a directory that provides a lot of value because I intentionally went into a lot of data scraping before I generated descriptions with AI. The thing that I'm not sure about is whether Google will even index it when it sees that it was written by Claude. And so,
Interesting.
But I'm hoping that eventually people will figure out how to sift through what's good AI and what's bad AI.
Right, because AI in and of itself does not equal bad. In fact, it equals just, like, if anything, it's maybe just equals faster. But
people are already designing LLMs that supposedly can trick the Google thing that detects whether or not it's AI, and you can set an AI to do it. Like, I could try and set it to the style of me. It doesn't know me, so it probably can't. But I remember Simon Sinek in that same interview saying that he went in and he asked AI to do something in the style of him. And he said it was actually really scary how good it was.
Yeah. I've seen some stuff like that people will make about Joe Rogan. And you're like, that does sound like something Joe Rogan would say. And that's the intonation he would have said it. And like, you know, it is interesting how if you have, and he has, I mean, he's one of the most prolific, you know, voices on the web. It makes sense that an AI would have ample content to be able to like recreate people who it has that much data.
So it seems like you're saying that you don't think we're headed for this doomsday scenario that I hear a lot of people talking about, which is encouraging to me. But one of the interviews that I was interested in was a conversation along AI where they had several scientists together. Some of them were AI. I think one was an evolutionary biologist, and they were talking about what the future looks like from here. I'm curious what you think the world will look like in another 8 years. It's comforting to me that we'll probably still have Survivor.
Dude, so is the question, what do I think it's like the tech landscape or our world's going to look like in 8 years because of the tech landscape?
You mentioned humans adapting, and I'm trying to flesh out what that would look like because it's a good argument, but it's hard for me to even imagine us adapting to something that's so good at adapting to us.
Yeah. So I don't subscribe to like the doomsday ideas, though I don't count it completely. Like, I'm not saying it's not possible. I just don't think that's the most likely route. And now, obviously, like also, so much about our current reality is pretty bad. Like, if you're gonna write a book about what bad things could be going on in society to equal what doomsday, description of doomsday, like we're always in wars. We're always, there's a lot of depression. There's a lot of, like, there's so many things that are already bad. So, like, when we say doomsday, like, what do we mean? That's just, like, another opinion on different bad things.
Sure. Well, to me, it's almost a worst case scenario than complete annihilation to live in a world where we've lost meaning.
Sure. 100%. So, the thing is, though, too, right now, how many people do you know that truly feel like they have meaning and purpose?
Several. A lot.
Sure. My assumption is that those people are still going to feel like they have meaning and purpose, even if AI were to be able to do so much more of our jobs. Now, the thing is too, there's just so many places I want to go. Let's see. One thing I want to say is, like, AI seems pretty far away from, at least right now, being able to, like, fix my plumbing and build houses and fix my bookshelf that's broken, or to fix my AC that went out. So, like, there's so many jobs that are always, well, in my opinion, there's so many jobs that just constantly need fixing. And then we also see that with every evolution of technology comes a new trade. Like when cars then became ubiquitous, now we need mechanics. And so I think there's probably going to be something similar within this new evolution of tech. So will it take jobs? Probably. Will it create jobs? Probably. And meaning doesn't necessarily come from our jobs. It comes from, like, what we do, which I know you do your job, but, like, also not everybody's meaning comes from, like, their 9 to 5. And so that's something. And then additionally, back to my adaptability, I think humans adapt. I think we love to create and we're highly adaptable. So, like, whatever tools we have, we're going to figure out how to continue to build and create. And that includes purpose and meaning.
I'm interested in your optimism about we're still going to need plumbers for a while, because I think that's true, and that's something that I think more people should do, because the money's good, or electrician or nurse. I can throw that out there. There's some jobs that I would argue you can't have a machine do in an ethical world. I think that might make nursing one of the winners in that regard, because you want somebody taking care of you to be able to relate to your own experience. And the idea of having Baymax take care of me is great, as long as Baymax does what I need him to do. But you get into so many ethical situations in the hospital that Baymax, even though he might be qualified if we make him intelligent enough, he won't be able to relate to it in the same way. And I don't really want to get myself into a situation where something that's more intelligent than me, potentially, is making decisions in ways that I don't understand. And on top of that, I think there's the fact that if you're a human, you have a level of authority to other humans that a machine won't, because they immediately identify it as machine-made or machine-directed. And I'm convinced that people would look at the machine and say, I do not have to listen to you.
Oh, interesting.
But as far as that goes, other than, I'm going out on a tangent here. But what I was trying to get back to was, things like plumbers and things that require human hands, that's great as long as the AI stays digital. But I mean, you look at somebody like Elon Musk with Tesla that's
Sure.
trying to make Optimus bots that can thread a needle. And
Sure.
I wonder how long plumbers' jobs safe in a situation like that.
Sure. So, sure, there might be a time, and this is probably something I should, just as a fun thought experiment, spend more time on thinking through the implications of, yeah, if we have a robot that can literally do everything, which I think is far away, but robots that can do everything in every vertical, whether it's plumbing, dentistry, nursing, etc. The other thing is, and this would be my argument if I had to like be in a debate. I'd be like, well, it's a big world out there, and not everybody in the whole world is going to have access to robot plumbers, and so it might not, America or wherever, it just might not be the place to find meaning and purpose if that's the case.
I actually like that perspective. Until it spreads to other countries. And I guess depending on how far you follow that down, we might end up seeing that on a global scale. And I wonder what that would do to other countries, because I see a lot of potential to exploit people when you have something that can be done cheaper. Because if you can hire a robot nurse for $10 an hour, then suddenly I'm not making enough to stay alive on.
Interesting.
So even though those jobs might still exist, the amount that you can charge for that might go down. But I am curious what you know about AI, and I'm not exactly sure of what your role is in this, but if you think you're qualified to answer this in some capacity, is there anything that you see that AI can't do that a human can? Because when I was one of those other interviews with the CEO of Replit, he mentioned that there's some kind of evidence that AI can't produce anything original, like it never has, and potentially it never would. Like, is that how you see AI?
That's how I understand AI.
Okay.
So what I understand is it's all essentially pattern recognition, at least like large language models and these like generative forms of AI. So it's pattern recognition. So I'm going to butcher this, but I'm trying to put it into my own language. These images that like you can generate, you can type in like, in a photorealistic genre, please generate me an image of an orangutan smoking a pipe, or, like whatever. What it does is it goes and looks at a bunch of images, right? And then like creates, I guess, what do they call it? Vectors of this is what pixel is most likely to be here and here and here and here and here. I'm probably butchering this because I'm not, I didn't develop these technologies, but so in that sense, yeah, there's nothing new. Like it has to go make a new image based on old images, based on thousands or millions or billions of old images. So like in that sense, it does seem like we're far off from like this apocalyptic, like it gets its own mind and wants to go take over the world, makes its own new plans and everything. Though I wouldn't put it past a human programming it to be that way. I just don't know if AI would, like, I don't believe that AI would go there itself.
How far does your understanding go in depth on blockchain? I'm transitioning topics.
Sure. Decent. So blockchain is one of those topics that like, it's so deep and so wide that, you have to be in it a long time in order to like understand all of the jargon. It's like a different language. And then even people who understand like this part of blockchain really well might understand that part of blockchain really well. And so I would say I'm somewhere like beginning intermediate. I have like circled blockchain spaces for probably 5 years and like orbited, and I go to a lot of tech conferences, like blockchain conferences, whether it's ETH Denver or Consensus or whatever. I also have built products using blockchain. So I have like probably more knowledge than maybe like your everyday person, but I'm not like, I don't write smart contracts myself.
Well, you have more knowledge than me, and I wanted to go back to it to have you flesh out a little bit more what that is, because you mentioned at the beginning, and I've been wanting to come back to it.
Sure.
And when I think blockchain, I think about Bitcoin, because my understanding, that's what it's based in. And it's been thinking about it a lot because today it's at an all-time high. It's just been getting notifications on my phone. It's 113,000 last I checked.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you have Bitcoin right now, you're pretty happy
Yep.
with how it's doing. But there's been speculation I've been reading about on the internet about Bitcoin and what could quantum computing do to that if we have.
Interesting.
Yeah. Because I haven't had many people that have a lot of knowledge on this to talk about, but my understanding of what quantum computer is, it's got a different level of technology that it computes things much faster. Like some problems that would have taken us thousands of years to solve with regular computers, it does in a few minutes. Does that mean that we should stop buying Bitcoin before would that threaten it?
So I don't understand quantum as well as I understand blockchain. The few people that I know working in quantum say that we're very far away from like quantum encryption / quantum hacking. I don't know.
Yeah, quantum hacking.
Yeah. And you would really only need one if you have the other kind of thing. And so I don't want to speak much on the quantum side of things, but let's imagine for a second that quantum encryption and hacking were possible. The reason that would threaten blockchain is valid. It's real because blockchain works by creating consensus. So it's essentially a decentralized public ledger. So just like a ledger that you would write down like transactions in let's say you're like, people used to have checkbooks and they would like balance the checkbooks. That ledger that you write down every transaction, that is now distributed across servers that are creating blocks, and that's what we call blockchain. Blocks that record a piece like of the story of that transaction. If you have $10 in your bank account and you give me 5 of it, we would write down, like the first block would say you have $10. The next block would say that you have 5 and I have 5, and the 5 that I have came from your 5.
So if you want to steal that money, you've got to make another block that says you gave me 5.
Right. And you wouldn't just be able to do that. You can't just go make another block, because in order for that block to be recorded, that block, and this is a very simplified version of it, but essentially that block goes and checks with all the other blocks and says, hey, is this what's on your ledger? Is this what's on your ledger? Does it fit with yours and yours and yours and yours and yours? Once it gets 51% agreement of the surrounding blocks that say, yes, Michelle does have $5 and it came from JT. So you're like, okay. So you would have to essentially, if you're a hacker right now, you would have to hack like 51% of the servers to steal $5 from me, which isn't possible. You'd have to do it all at once. But see, this is where quantum comes in. If quantum could potentially do that, if quantum could hack 51% of the servers and say, no, Michelle actually doesn't have $5. She has $0, and that $5 is over in my wallet. Like, if you could do that, it would be through quantum. If somebody comes up with a way to do like quantum hacking, it goes to, like, you could assume that there's also quantum encryption. So you could stay one step ahead. So in my opinion, at least at this point, I don't think that we need to worry about that as far as Bitcoin goes, though it does make sense. I could see a horizon in which we do need to worry about it.
I guess if you want to be completely safe, buy Bitcoin and quantum stocks. And then you win either way. How do you maintain relationships through the CEO process? I mean, if you mentioned boyfriend, I don't know how much time you have for relationships, but you mentioned taking Sundays and community. Like, how does that work when you're bouncing around different places, traveling like you did today, and dealing with so many different moving parts?
Community is really hard to maintain as a CEO. Which is one good thing to like the people you work with, because that becomes your community. And then of course trying to prioritize relationships outside of work as well. But for instance, like one of my brothers works for me, and so and he's an incredible product designer. And so I'm lucky that somebody I like and love and trust I get to work with him every day. Because not only do we get to have a relation, like we talk way more now than we did before we worked together. So one good way is just work with people you like, hire people you like, and work with those people. But then also I think it comes back to discipline. Got to be disciplined. Dating is really hard, partially because the things I do are like, first of all, a little bit atypical. Like not a lot of people found in, run a startup. And so challenges that I have are not as relatable. Now, certain people are just great at being listeners and empathetic, but it's more likely that I'm probably going to jive with someone who understands startups. Like that's more likely. Also, I don't feel the need to have everything in common with somebody, but that definitely like builds, you just have more ties with somebody that already gets you on multiple levels. As far as relationships within the startup, this has been a really hard one. Partially because I end up really liking everybody I work with. I have a tendency to trust and like people around me. And maybe everybody does, I don't know, but I tend to, no matter the job, no matter whatever it is, like I tend to like the people I'm around. And as a CEO and founder of a startup especially, I have to make tough decisions. Like I have to do what's like even legally, like I have a fiduciary responsibility to do what's right for the shareholders. And so like if I have a C-level, meaning like a chief of something, like a major person or even non-major, like anybody in my organization, they have to be doing really good. I can't just like keep them on staff because I like them. I have to be getting value from them. Otherwise they can't be on staff. And now in like a corporate job, I think a lot of people can get away with, oh, well, they're not bad at their job, or they're a value add in some ways, or like they're pleasant to have on the team and like we need somebody to do that thing so they don't get fired, right? But in a startup, you have to be like top shelf. And so it has been a really difficult thing for me to have to like let go people who I really like, if that makes sense. And then trying to like maintain or like how do I navigate those conversations so that they don't feel either rugged or whatever. Like how can I navigate the conversations to show them that this is a business decision, it's not personal, I like you in all these ways, but here's why this decision makes sense for the company. That's been really hard.
That's a lot to unpack. And that's a special kind of relationship you must have with your brother to be able to work together like that. I don't think I could work with anyone that close to me. I've tried with different people, and I'm afraid to ask anyone to work with me if we're friends because I'm afraid that I might destroy the friendship in the process.
Yeah. So I would definitely say it's probably better not to work with friends, but to become friends with the people you work with, unless the person that you're friends with, they are top shelf. The problem is, and I hate to say this, most of the people and like and love and trust and hang out with are average. That's just like law of averages. Like most people are about average.
Sure.
And half the people are below average. Half the people are above average. But like, so how many people do you actually know who are top shelf executors, performers, amazing at what they do, what they put their mind to, and have all the things that you need to be a good startup employee or founder? Not very many. And so just for that reason alone, I would say instead of looking around you at like who's best, I would say like look for who is best. Does that make sense?
That does make sense. I'm curious how do you have camaraderie with all the people you work with?
Yeah, I feel so, yeah. And it doesn't, like, it has to be built.
Sure.
Like that's another, coming back to spending time with people, the more time and the more communication you have with somebody, the more allied you typically are. So like this weekend, so right now I traveled here to Dallas for this and for some content filming tomorrow. And then on Sunday, I'm flying to an event where some investors are getting together and some of my team as well. And so that'll be a great time of like building camaraderie, and then also like, building camaraderie within my own team, aligning on goals and vision, and then also building more, deeper and better relationships with investors. And here's the great thing there is like, as I get more and more into this world and meet more and more of those top shelf, like, executors and investors and advisors within that group, that's where I typically find like great friends. Like I'm looking forward to going to Salt Lake this weekend because the people are incredibly intelligent, driven, good people, like good-hearted people. Not everybody in that top shelf category is also good-hearted. That's one problem. And so I've even had to like, oh, I thought this person was top shelf, but because they don't really fit with culture, I have to make a tough decision there. Just because they're good at selling doesn't mean I want them on my team representing my company, you know? And so there's all sorts of things to juggle there, but like you can build that camaraderie that you need to by prioritizing in-person time and also just like daily communication.
I'm thinking back again to the blind man challenge where the person wasn't receptive to communication. If you had any experiences like that, it happens. How do you navigate that?
As diplomatically as possible. It is easier for me to fire somebody who is a great person than somebody who's not a great person or who's not receptive to like direction. Because if I'm talking to somebody who tries hard but is just not getting the right stuff done, I can be like, dude, I've loved working with you. And I see that you tried hard. I know that you put a lot of effort into this. I acknowledge that. You did really good over here on this other thing, but we're still not, we're missing deadlines. And you're the kind of linchpin in that moment. And so we have to. It's a business decision. I really like you, though. That's easier conversation for me to have than you suck at everything, leave. Like, I don't want to say that, but like, if that's the truth, if they're not receptive to direction, if they're not getting their stuff done, if they're not, you know, if they're not good at their job, they're not a nice, pleasant human to be around, they're not receptive to direction or advisory, like, that's actually harder for me because I don't have those good things to say to make it like a diplomatic exit. I have to just be like, I don't like it. Bye. That's actually a harder conversation for me.
I can see that. That's why I think it'd be so hard to work with family because it would make things awkward at the reunions.
True. There is so in some of my work sometimes I've done good at helping the person understand that what they're doing is not good enough and they resign. That has happened multiple times. And that's an art, you know, that's like I had somebody one time that would make a big mistake and I would call and be like, hey, notice this mistake. It's a really big deal. Here's why that's a big deal. Why was that mistake made? And like, I'm not firing you. I'm not whatever, but like, why was that mistake made? And then the person responded, oh, I think that mistake was made because of these reasons. I was like, okay, how do we solve those reasons? Like, how do we solve for this so it doesn't happen again? Oh, I think she came up with the idea. She said, I think we should implement these steps. Great. Let's implement those steps. But then it happened again, like a week later. And I was like, hey, girl, it happened again. And we know that this is a big deal for the reasons we stated. What failed? We implemented the steps you said. Oh, yeah, I also realized I think we need to go do this other thing. Great. Do it. What happened a third time? And I contacted her again, like, girl, what's up? And she's like, I think I'm not right for this job. I said, I think you're probably right. You know, like, so there's ways to go about it. That's good. Other people don't admit that. So it's harder with that. And in that case, you can change the compensation structure. And actually this, I think has been very valuable or something I'm learning. I wish I would have known at the beginning. Maybe you're paying somebody hourly or a salary or something, but they're not really actually achieving the thing that they were meant to achieve. And so instead of in addition to having conversations about how do we fix this, what should we implement, is there something we can set up to make you more, successful? In addition to that, it's been very helpful to understand that maybe they don't get paid a salary, maybe they get paid commission only or something. Because then it's really like, don't just spin your wheels, like have an outcome and then you'll get paid. And therefore, again, that would almost like they would remove themselves because like if they can't ever make a sale or achieve the milestone set before them, they're not going to continue to work for free. So like, I'm learning there's just strategic ways to make sure you can either get value or restructure.
I don't know if you've read the book Extreme Ownership. I think it's by Leaf. You have?
I have not read it. Is that Jocko?
I think it is. I think that was the guy I couldn't remember, and then Leaf Babin.
Okay.
If I'm not butchering his name.
So I love the concept. I know the concept. I've listened to like Jocko's podcast a little bit, and I've read maybe similar books like Embrace the Suck and different in the kind of a similar category. But I love the concept of extreme ownership. What do you think about extreme ownership?
I like the story that he put in there about, well, he has a story in the book about a team of SEALs, and they're training people to become SEALs. And so they've got a bunch of boats in the water, and everyone's got a team of SEALs to row their boat, and they've been going for 3 days, no food, no water. Well, they probably have water, but no food, no rest, exhausted. And the deal is, if you win the boat race, you get to rest for a minute. So everyone wants to win the boat race, but you're on a team of people, just like your immunity challenges. And they've got a designated leader in each of the boats. And so he sees these boats going out. Boat 2, I believe, was the one that was winning, and then boat 6 is losing every single time. And his guy says, why don't we make a switch? Let's put the captain from boat 2 into the boat 6 and vice versa and see how they do. So they switch leaders, and boat 6 is thrilled. I mean, he's like, okay, I get to be with the good team now. And boat 2 is not happy, but he's accepting it. So they go out, and boat 2 continues to do well, and they still win the race. But suddenly boat 6, instead of being dead last, are almost competing with boat 2. And so I'm thinking along the lines of what difference it makes in leadership when you're willing to own your own decisions, because what happens is boat 2 figures out the strengths and weaknesses of his team and helps them function together as a good team. And so boat 6 takes over that. They're already a good team. But then when he comes over to his new boat, people that have had a leader that isn't helping them reach their potential, he's able to figure out what's been going wrong all this time and help them work together as a team. And that was inspiring to me, because that's something I think a lot of people struggle with, is I don't have good enough tech, so I'm failing. And then you see someone that's just better at that thing, and they come along with the same tech and produce a better result. You're like, oh, okay. Now that I know that I'm the problem, I can fix myself.
Yeah. So leadership is something that, like, I think everybody can get better at. I know I am, for sure. And I think I have a little bit of natural leadership quality, or at least a little bit of a natural proclivity to, like, gather people into collaboration and set us towards a North Star. But there's so much more to obviously a CEO than just gathering collaborators and heading towards a North Star. That's the gist, and that's the part I'm good at. But I have been deficient in so many of the, like, so many other aspects. For instance, so there's a book called Turn This Ship Around. Similar idea, actually, to what you described, but it's submarines. It's a true story of, like the worst ranked submarine in the U.S. Navy, and a leader that got sent there, and what he did, and turned out it ended up being, like, the highest ranked one as far as, like, retention and passing inspections, or, you know, innovating different things. I don't know, all these different metrics they started to excel in because of the leadership change. And he wrote the book to say that to encourage people toward something that he calls, instead of leader-follower leadership, leader-leader leadership, or something like this. So essentially he's saying, and I totally agree, the thought is that, hey, if I go and hire a bunch of people, I'm not hiring them just because I want little workers, the minions that, like, get stuff done that I say. That's actually not true at all. If I'm hiring someone into my startup, I'm hiring them because they have something I don't. Like, I'm not a natural marketer. I'm not a software developer. I'm not a, you know, like, there's all of these categories that's not me. And so I need exceptional people in each category. But further than that, like, more important than that, I need each of those people to feel and know that they are an owner and a leader of their category, if that makes sense. So, like, I don't want to be the one always making the decisions. I want somebody who's good at what they do to say, here's how I intend to, you know, get thousands of people to the sales funnel this week. That's not something I should probably come up with. That's just not, I've never studied it other than reading books, you know, I haven't done it much. So it's like, I want people who take ownership within each of their categories. And there's a type of leader that is really able to instill that and encourage that. And so that's something I'm trying to learn how to be, I guess. How do I be a leader that gets the most value out, like, gets the most potential out of the people that are on the team?
I'm curious, after all your time being a CEO and learning about relationships and about people and how to manage people, how to control things. Is there anything that you would have done differently on Survivor?
Oh yeah.
What would you have done? How would you have done it differently?
So I would have literally, I think my downfall was, and they didn't show this very well, but it would have been hard to show this, but essentially I went quiet on my last day because my closest alliance, Jay, came up to me in good faith. He believed this was the case, and he was partially right, but also partially wrong. But he came up and was like, Michelle, stop playing so hard. Because I had enough votes, and enough, like, people willing to vote with me to vote out Chris, the big guy, the big lawyer, that came from the Gen X side. So I had enough votes that I could have pulled that off. But then Jay came to me and was like, Michaela on the previous island told Brett and Sunday that you're running the show. And so now Brett and Sunday think you're like really powerful. So you'll, if you prove them right by pulling off this, thing to get Chris out, everybody will know that you're running the show. It'll like confirm to them. And then they will, like, you'll have a target on your back, and then you'll be the next one voted out. And it sounded right. But I didn't factor in that the quietest person is going home. Like, the person with the least amount of allies goes home. And how do you have more allies? By communicating, talking, and FaceTime. So like, that's the biggest thing I would have done differently, is communication and FaceTime.
I really should have asked this earlier, but I was curious if you have any suggestions for someone that wants to get on Survivor. How did you do that?
Okay, so I was recruited, like, essentially, like, casting director that worked near the producers or something, was a friend of a friend of a friend or something, and this is I'm trying to summarize a very long story into a quick one, but like, a casting agent found me through a friend of a friend on Facebook, I think, and looked at my profile and was like, oh, this is an interesting person. I'm going to interview her. So his name's Chris. Chris called me. So actually, start earlier, coworker Pete called his friend Chris, who was a casting agent, and was like, hey, you got to take a closer look at this girl. I think she'd be good for Survivor. Chris then calls me, interviews me, tells me I'm a special kind of weird, which I took as a compliment. And he then pitches my name to the Survivor, like, casting directors or producers the next day. I started then getting calls from them for like months. And here's essentially, so then the rest is history. But to your question of how would I like advise somebody if they want to get on the show, there's a few things. One is, not everybody should go on the show. Just because you like watching it doesn't mean you should go on it. It's actually very hard. Get ready to not sleep and not eat and like, not have any true friends. And the other thing is, if you want to, so if you've really weighed the cost and you still want to go on, the kind of people they put on the show are good storytellers. Can you tell a concise story in front of a camera, ideally, and make it interesting? And so some people tell a story and maybe they're a good storyteller, but it takes them 20 minutes. Not going to happen. Like, the confessionals that they show are, like 25 to 45 seconds, And so what they want is somebody who can tell an interesting story or get a point across in very few words, but remain intriguing. So like, something about you that is there something about you that's already intriguing or interesting? Do you have like, they also like characters. Like, there's so much vanilla and noise in the world. Like, they want characters that rise above that noise. So they want, a really pretty girl that seems dumb, or they want a really buff dude that's super smart. Like, they want like a character, you know what I mean? Like a character. And it doesn't have to be a pretty girl that's dumb. It could be a pretty girl that's really smart, or a pretty girl that's like a lawyer, and so she's very like matter of fact. They want a character. And then they want that character to be able to tell the story, because the whole episode is just narrated by the players. There's no like official narrator. There's not like Jeff Probst behind the scenes like, and then on day 3 they voted out Marissa. Like, it's not like that. It's, so today at the challenge, Marissa was getting on my nerves. Like, you have to be able to tell a story that's interesting to a viewer, and then concise, and be able to like lead the viewer with just dialogue, B-roll, and confessionals.
I feel so sorry for those editors sometimes. When I think about how long it takes me to just edit these videos to have multiple camera views, and I think about that 400 hours of footage, plus you've got to figure out how to select from the conversations that you have with people, especially since I'm guessing a lot of them haven't been in front of a camera a whole lot. I can kind of see how they would do it now because, I mean, sometimes when you're running something like this, you're a little bit more selective on what you do. And if you want to design an intro or something, you can dig through a lot. And if you dig long enough, sometimes you'll find one spot. It's about 4 words. But it would be so much easier if the people would do that for you rather than dig through lots of lines and try to separate them in a way that looks like that person. Well, I mean, until you find that place where they're telling a story concisely.
Right.
Well, on this podcast, we have a closing tradition. It's a game I like to play where we have the audience ask questions, and then the previous speaker, not knowing who the next speaker will be, will select one of those questions. The question that has been left for you is, what unique ambition do you have that other people may not know about?
I've alluded to it, but one of the major what do I call this? Schemas that I use to make decisions is suffering. Will this increase or decrease suffering in the world? And so that's how I vote. That's how I make decisions. That's where I put my time into. So that's kind of just my schema is, will this add or decrease the suffering going on in the world?
I love that passion. I wish more people would think that way.
Me too.
Especially in a medical context, because I think a lot of times people design something with the intention of decreasing suffering, but we need more auditors along the way that can tell, is this thing actually decreasing suffering overall? I think an example is things like ventilators that have a good intention, but they have the potential for abuse when somebody's on some kind of a life support for longer than maybe this life support wasn't intended, and it really can prolong a human being's suffering.
Interesting. Yeah. Interesting.
That's an interesting place to start if you're doing a startup is, well, I guess you could get all tied up in knots thinking about the implications of this, but I mean, when people see that their thing is producing suffering, I wish that more people would have the courage to step in and see, how can we still make money from this without increasing the suffering?
Right. Agreed. And I do not respect, well, okay, I shouldn't say that as a blanket statement. I was going to say I don't respect founders who unapologetically put out a product that clearly is extractive or causes suffering. At the same time, there are certain things about everybody that you can probably find respectable. Whoa, you did actually build a huge business. Now it's extractive and causes issues. But there are certain things I can find that I respect. At the same time, I agree with you that I do wish that more people had ethical backbone that said, I'm going to only build products that are good for human flourishing or the earth, And so, for my AI infrastructure, it's about relieving stress and headache for realtors, or real estate agents, brokerages, transaction coordinators, hoping that they will spend either more time on money generating activities that give them a better life, or spend more time with friends and family outside of work. So those are the 2 paths I see that they could benefit. In my other startup, my decentralized investing platform, I view that as a way that everyday people can see tangible return from good financial choices, therefore helping them get out of debt, afford housing and education, and just enjoy a life a little bit more free of that gross financial burden that so many of us feel. And so I wish, and I know every founder looks on the brightest side of their baby, right? Of their business. So I know that could be hard to then sift through, with social media. I could easily see why some people fight tooth and nail saying this is a good thing, even though it causes clearly so much suffering. And so I know it's hard, but I do wish that I wish there's more ethical backbone for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, thank you for your time, Michelle. This has been awesome.
Thanks.